All right, family, settle in. We're diving headfirst into another episode of Family Guy, Season 23, Episode 7. And let me tell you, this one's a doozy. You know, whenever I see an episode pop up that feels a little off-kilter, a little more chaotic than usual, I immediately start thinking about the directors. And this one? This one feels like it was helmed by someone who maybe lost a bet and had to make a sitcom episode using only things found in a German beer garden and a chiropractor's office. It's got that manic energy, that slight air of desperation. So, to whoever directed this thing, I hope you got a good laugh out of it, because watching it back was a roller coaster. We've got our usual opening earworm, that iconic Family Guy theme, reminding us of a simpler time before everything went sideways. And then, bam, we're dropped into a brewery Oktoberfest. The writers, they never miss a beat with the local flavor, do they? They're trying to win back market share from fentanyl. That's a joke so dark it makes you wonder if the writers are secretly in a pact with the devil. Lois is out there reposting articles about rainbow fentanyl on Facebook, basically declaring herself a child savior. And Peter, bless his simple heart, is wondering how Germans even came up with Oktoberfest. Turns out, according to the show, it's because Germany is tired of being hated for its world wars and wants to prove it's fun and silly, not a bunch of human exterminators. So their solution? Beer, pretzels, and Oompa Oompa horns. And little square mustaches. Thank God Meg shut that down. But then we get to the make-your-own sausage station, and Peter's immediate reaction is they look like little poops. Classic Peter. And naturally, this leads to a whole situation with a rogue sausage demanding Peter make it whole again. It's the kind of surreal nonsense that only this show can pull off. Then, the episode takes a sharp turn into the bizarre world of alternative medicine when Peter spots a chiropractor. He uses this as an excuse to brag about hurting his back reading screenplays for a competition he paid to be a judge in. Oh, Peter, you never disappoint with your self-serving anecdotes. The chiropractor himself is a classic quack, offering colonic irrigation and steering the conversation with leading questions. He hooks Peter with expensive supplements that only give a temporary good feeling, then hits him with a $700 bill, complete with a fart surcharge. You cannot make this stuff up.
And what's the takeaway from this whole scam? Peter and the guys decide they can totally become chiropractors too, because apparently all you need is an internet search and a teeth whitening kit. The episode then throws in a hilariously bleak ad for sun in front of a tree photography, which basically mocks the whole concept of forced family photos and predicts the eventual downfall of the photogenic child due to some terrible scandal. It's a perfect example of Family Guy's dark humor, taking something innocent and twisting it into pure dread. And then, of course, we have the carnival games. Lois, apparently being New England lady drunk, demands Peter win her a prize, threatening to name ex-boyfriends if he fails. This leads to Peter trying to win a stuffed animal, but his elbow acts up, a callback to the Late Night Wars. We also get a glimpse of Lois's ex, Mikey Bagshaw, who is apparently still around because ain't no schools closed. This whole carnival scene is a reminder that everyone in Quahog has a messy past with everyone else. The show then circles back to Peter's inability to throw, a plot point that's been a running gag for years. His karate sensei yelling at him for wearing light-up sneakers is a funny visual, and the modern update of throws like a girl to throws like a Chalamet is a nice little dig at current pop culture. And then the Channel 5 apology for airing pornography during a cooking segment. It's a meta-joke about the unpredictable nature of online content and the challenges of managing it. The episode gets weird again with the zombies and shrubbery, leading to Chris asserting his dominance over Peter's usual spot, calling him chief multiple times. This escalates into a whole beta dad conversation. Peter feels like a failure, and the show leans into the idea that modern parenting requires a different approach, even if Peter can't quite grasp it. We get the farmer's market as the ultimate beta dad headquarters, which is a funny visual. The subplot of Chris and the new chiropractor office is a bizarre tangent, involving a sick tropical fish and a guy named Eric who's the designated tropical fish guy. It's the kind of pointless but memorable detail this show excels at. We also see Peter trying to get drunk alone, but Popsicle Peter is there, which is just a lot. The reveal that Cleveland, Quagmire, and Joe are avoiding Peter because they don't want to be associated with his nouveau arms is a classic friend group dynamic. Cleveland explains his terrible throwing ability is due to a childhood where his dad always had a headache and he only had raccoons for friends. This leads to a genuinely funny line about throwing bad for a guy, but really good for a raccoon. And then the bomb drops. Peter is invited to throw out the ceremonial first pitch for the Quahog blowholes. His past failure with throwing is brought up, but Peter, in true Peter fashion, declares he's not Batgirl and will throw a perfect strike. This entire episode feels like a masterclass in the show's ability to juggle absurd plot lines, character-based humor, and surprisingly relevant social commentary, even if it's delivered with a sledgehammer. And if you're enjoying this deep dive into Quahog's chaos, consider hitting that subscribe button. We're always here to break down the madness. It's like Peter's trying to catch a curveball in life, and we're here to catch the commentary. This episode, Family Guy Season 23, Episode 7, is a prime example of the show at its most chaotic and, arguably, its most thematically rich, even if it's buried under layers of pure, unadulterated silliness. On the surface, we have Peter's long-standing inability to throw a ball coming to a head when he's invited to throw out the first pitch for the local minor league baseball team, the Quahog Blowholes. This is interwoven with a bizarre subplot about Peter, Joe, and Quagmire deciding to become chiropractors after a bad experience at Oktoberfest, and Chris's newfound assertiveness leading to him telling Peter where to sit. The episode tries to tie these disparate threads together by exploring themes of perceived competence, self-worth, and the ridiculousness of quick fixes. Peter's journey, as usual, is about confronting his own limitations, even if he does it through sheer delusion. The chiropractor subplot is a sharp, albeit heavy-handed, critique of predatory alternative medicine and the ease with which people can be conned. The idea that you can become a chiropractor just by Googling it and getting a mail-order certification is a hilarious exaggeration, but it hits close to home for a lot of people who've been burned by similar schemes. Chris's arc, meanwhile, is about a kid finally finding his voice, even if it means telling his dad off and establishing his own territory. It's a subtle nod to the evolving dynamics within the Griffin family, where the children are starting to push back against Peter's constant infantilization of them.
The show, I think, is grappling with the idea of what it means to be a man in modern times. Peter embodies the old school, sometimes incompetent, but always well-meaning dad, while Chris represents a new generation that's more vocal about their needs and boundaries. The writing here is typical Family Guy, a mix of sharp observational humor, surreal non-sequiturs, and occasional moments of genuine emotional resonance, often undercut by a crude joke. The pacing is frantic, jumping from one absurd scenario to the next with little preamble. The main plot with Peter and the baseball pitch feels a bit tacked on initially, but it serves as a decent vehicle for Peter's character development, or lack thereof. The episode's biggest strength is its willingness to tackle darker themes with a comedic lens. The commentary on the opioid crisis, the predatory nature of some medical professionals, and the struggles of modern parenting are all present, even if they're wrapped in layers of fart jokes and exploding sausages. In the grand scheme of the season, this episode feels like a mid-season jolt, a reminder that the show can still come up with original concepts, even if they occasionally feel like they were brainstormed during a fever dream. It's not a season-defining episode, but it's definitely not forgettable. It's the kind of episode that makes you appreciate the show's longevity and its continued ability to surprise, even after all these years. My personal verdict? This episode is a solid, if slightly uneven, entry. It has its moments of brilliance and its dips into pure zaniness, but it ultimately delivers a satisfying, if predictable, arc for Peter and offers sharp social commentary. It's a good episode, but not necessarily a great one. Let's dissect some of the truly unforgettable, or perhaps just unforgettably bizarre, moments this episode threw at us. First up, we have the whole Oktoberfest scenario. It opens with this whole premise about Germany wanting to prove it's not full of human exterminators, and decides the best way to do that is with beer, pretzels, and those ridiculously loud horns. Peter's initial reaction that they look like little poops, and then the rogue sausage that demands Peter make me whole again, is peak Family Guy surrealism. It's not just random, it's a visual gag that's both disgusting and hilarious. The genius is in how it takes something mundane, like a food station, and turns it into a bizarre, sentient demand. What this really says is that even the most innocent-looking situations can turn into existential crises for Peter.
He's constantly being called upon to fix things, even when he has no idea what he's doing. My take on it? I love how the show just commits to the absurdity. Imagine a sentient sausage. It's a testament to their writer's ability to find humor in the grotesque. If I were to change it, maybe have the sausage have a more complex philosophical monologue before its demand. Make it a little more meta about its existence as food. That would have been truly next level. Then there's the chiropractor charade. Peter, needing an adjustment, stumbles upon a guy who claims to be one. The chiropractor's diagnosis is hilariously vague. Tired and needing to eat more often. He then hits Peter with a $700 bill, including a fart surcharge. The sheer audacity of that surcharge, especially since Peter claims he didn't fart, is gold. It's the perfect illustration of how some professions prey on people's vulnerabilities. The scene works because it's relatable in its frustration with overpriced, questionable services. It screams, "This is how people get ripped off." What it's saying is that anyone can be a victim, and the system is designed to make you pay, even for things you didn't do. My rewrite? Make the fart surcharge even more specific, like the phantom gas emission fee. And maybe the chiropractor could have a miniature windsock in his office that spins wildly when Peter actually does fart, confirming the surcharge. This moment makes me genuinely angry at those scammy businesses, but also laugh at the ridiculousness of the show's portrayal. Next, we have the sun in front of a tree photography ad. This is pure dark comedy gold. It starts as a parody of saccharine family photography, but quickly devolves into a chilling prediction of the child's future villainy, all captured in front of a tree. The line about the son biting his dad for taking off his Spider-Man shoes, and then later wondering if that monster was always inside him, is a gut punch. It perfectly captures the anxieties of parents about their children's futures and the unexpected ways things can go wrong. It's a commentary on how we try to freeze moments in time, only for life to inevitably move forward, often in unpleasant directions. My take? It's brilliant. It's uncomfortable, but brilliant. What I'd change is minimal. Maybe add a quick flash forward of the son's mugshot, still in front of a tree, just for maximum impact. The humor comes from the sheer, unvarnished truth of parental fear. The episode then throws us into the carnival games, where Lois, in her New England lady drunk state, demands Peter win her a toy.
The threat of him having to name ex-boyfriends is a classic Lois power move. Peter's elbow injury from the late night wars is a funny callback, adding a layer of absurdity to his athletic prowess, or lack thereof. This scene highlights the pressures Peter faces, not just from his own incompetence, but from the demands of his family. It's a microcosm of his daily struggles. My take on it? I love how the show uses these mundane settings for epic character moments. If I were to tweak it, maybe the prize he's trying to win is something incredibly specific and useless, like a limited edition novelty ice cube tray. Then, the ultimate humiliation would be even greater. Following that, we get the throws like a Chalamet line. This is a great example of Family Guy's topical humor. Peter's friend calls out his terrible throwing, and instead of the usual throws like a girl, it's updated for the current era. This is the show being self-aware and engaging with modern slang. It works because it's unexpected and lands a subtle jab at celebrity culture. It tells us that the show is still paying attention to what's happening in the world. My rewrite? Maybe have the friend say he throws like he's trying to impress Timothée Chalamet's agent, but failing miserably. That adds another layer. It's funny because it takes a common insult and contemporizes it, showing the writers are still in touch. Chris telling Peter to move because he's in his spot, and then doubling down with Chief is a small but significant character moment. It's the first real assertion of dominance from Chris in this episode, and it's directed at Peter. This scene is crucial because it shows Chris is growing and not just a passive recipient of Peter's antics. It signifies a shift in the power dynamic, however minor. What it's saying is that the kids are finally starting to push back. My version? Make Chris's assertion more elaborate, perhaps citing zoning laws or a pre-existing seating reservation for that exact spot. Add a little dramatic flair. It's a great example of a character finally standing up for themselves, even if it's just about a couch spot. The reveal of the fake chiropractic office and the dying tropical fish is pure, distilled Family Guy absurdity. The idea that the most important part of a busy doctor's office is caring for a fish that's impossible to keep alive, and the designated tropical fish guy who offers useless advice, is a brilliant, nonsensical tangent. It showcases the show's talent for creating bizarre, memorable side plots that have no real bearing on the main story, but are hilarious in their own right.
It's a commentary on the pointless things we sometimes get assigned to do. My only change would be to have the fish develop its own complex personality and communicate telepathically with Chris about its impending doom. That would add a whole new layer of existential dread. Finally, Peter's stunt double for having catch with Chris is a classic gag. The idea that Peter is so fundamentally bad at something that he needs a fat Comic-Con attendee to impersonate him for basic life skills like throwing a ball is a hilarious, self-deprecating joke about Peter's complete lack of athletic ability. It's a visual punchline that relies on the audience's understanding of Peter's character. It tells us that Peter's life is basically a series of illusions and workarounds. My rewrite? Have the stunt double not only dress like Peter, but also be named Peter Griffin's slightly less successful, more rotund cousin, Paul Griffin. It just adds that extra touch of meta-commentary. It's funny because it's a physical representation of Peter's failings. In this episode, Peter Griffin is, as usual, the focal point of our ridicule and, occasionally, our pity. His core characteristic here is his utter incompetence, particularly when it comes to physical tasks like throwing a ball. He embodies the idea of the well-meaning but clueless dad. His journey to throw a first pitch is less about genuine effort and more about a series of embarrassing mishaps and delusional confidence. He's used well here because his flaws are the engine for the comedy. His best moment is probably his confident declaration that he's not Batgirl and will throw a perfect strike, despite all evidence to the contrary. This episode doesn't necessarily change how I see Peter, but it reinforces his established character as a man perpetually out of his depth. His role here suggests the show will continue to put him in situations where his incompetence is highlighted for laughs. Lois, on the other hand, is shown to be a woman of action, albeit fueled by New England lady drunk. Her demanding Peter win her a toy and her threat to name ex-boyfriends is classic Lois, showing her manipulative but also her underlying desire for Peter to prove himself, however misguided. She's used effectively as the catalyst for Peter's current predicament. Her best moment is that subtle threat, which is both funny and indicative of her marital frustrations. This episode solidifies her role as the pragmatic one trying to navigate Peter's chaos.
Chris, in a surprising turn, shows genuine assertiveness. Telling Peter to move from his spot and doubling down with Chief is a major step for him. He's not just the passive, dim-witted son anymore. His role here is to show the evolution of the younger generation pushing back. His best moment is that initial assertion of his seating rights. This episode suggests Chris might be developing more agency, which could be interesting to see develop. Brian, our resident intellectual, is mostly absent from the main plot, but his brief interactions, like his concern about Peter's shaky eyes and fear due to energy drinks, serve to highlight Peter's unhealthy habits. He's used here more as a voice of reason, that is, of course, ignored. His commentary on the chiropractor's Dr. B persona is on point. Joe and Quagmire are, as always, Peter's less than enthusiastic sidekicks. They get roped into the chiropractor scheme and express their disdain for Peter's lack of athletic ability. Their role is to provide a sounding board for Peter's failures and to offer their own brand of cynical humor. Quagmire's explanation for why he's avoiding Peter, quote, didn't want people thinking we were noodle-armed by association, end quote, is a funny, character-specific jab. Meg, in a brief but significant appearance, is the one who offers to teach Peter how to throw. This is a reversal of their usual dynamic, where Meg is typically the target of everyone's abuse. Her quiet competence, having won a state championship and gone to the Olympics, which Peter conveniently missed, is a poignant reminder of how overlooked she is. This episode actually gives Meg a moment of competence and agency. Her best moment is that quiet reveal of her athletic achievements, which highlights the injustice of her family's treatment of her. It makes you wonder if this is a sign that the show might finally give Meg more respect, or if it's just another gag. This episode is packed with little details that you might miss if you're not paying close attention, or if you're just chuckling at the main plot. First off, that opening theme song, it's so iconic, but the lyrics themselves are a little cynical, aren't they? Violence in movies and sex on TV, but then it pivots to good old-fashioned values. It's a sly commentary on what modern society values versus what the show, ironically, often portrays. It sets the stage perfectly for the hypocrisy and absurdity that's about to unfold. Then there's the mention of fentanyl being a market competitor to beer. It's a dark, almost throwaway line, but it speaks volumes about the show's willingness to touch on real-world issues, even if it's through the most inappropriate lens possible. It's a hidden gem because it's so brief, but it adds a layer of contemporary relevance that most viewers might overlook. Another subtle detail is the chiropractor's vague questioning. He asks about tiredness and hunger, questions that can be easily manipulated. This is a textbook example of how charlatans build trust by making people feel understood, even when they're leading them down a financially ruinous path. It's a masterclass in subtle manipulation, disguised as genuine concern. This is the kind of thing you only notice if you've been around the block a few times, or have a keen eye for psychological tactics. Speaking of psychological tactics, that sun in front of a tree photography ad is riddled with them. The underlying message isn't just about bad photos, It's about the fear of parental failure and the unsettling realization that children are individuals who might turn out to be disappointments. The repeated phrase, "in front of a tree," is the anchor, making it seem mundane, but the narrative that follows is anything but. It's a hidden commentary on the anxiety of raising children. The detail about Peter's elbow injury stemming from the late-night wars is a fun little callback for longtime fans. It adds depth to his character by suggesting a past filled with epic, albeit nonsensical, conflicts. It's a small nod that rewards viewers who have been with the show since its earlier seasons, adding a layer of continuity to the character's lore. And then there's the "throws like a Chalamet" line. It's a quick, witty update to an old insult. It shows the writers are aware of current trends and can cleverly weave them into the dialogue, making the humor feel fresh and relevant, even if it's a fleeting moment. It's a gem because it requires you to be tuned in to current pop culture to fully appreciate the slight. Finally, the recurring chief dialogue between Chris and Peter isn't just about seating. It's a subtle power play. Chris, using it multiple times, signifies his growing confidence and his willingness to challenge Peter's authority, even in small ways. It's a recurring motif that underscores the episode's theme of Chris finding his voice. It's a character detail that's easy to miss if you're focused on the bigger gags. So what if things had gone a little differently? Let's look at Peter's decision to become a chiropractor.
The episode presents it as a hilarious, impulsive reaction to being overcharged. What if instead of just deciding to become one, Peter actually tried to implement some of his flawed logic into a legitimate business? Imagine Peter opening up a Griffin Family Chiropractic, where his adjustments involve tickle fights and his supplements are just expired Pop-Tarts. The humor could come from him genuinely trying to help people, but failing spectacularly due to his fundamental lack of understanding, leading to even more chaotic situations than the current version. It would lean into the absurdity of him being in charge of people's well-being. Another potential change could be in how Peter learns to throw. Instead of Meg teaching him, what if he sought out professional help, but from someone completely unqualified and eccentric? Like he hires a disgraced former Olympic gymnast who now teaches people to throw by interpretive dance, or a disgraced baseball player who believes throwing is all about channeling your inner spirit animal. This would allow for more surreal training montages and more outlandish characters to interact with Peter. It would amp up the visual comedy and give Peter even more absurd mentors. And finally, let's consider the ending. The episode ends with Peter still seemingly unable to throw, but Meg has taught him. What if the final scene wasn't about Peter succeeding, but about him completely misinterpreting Meg's teaching, and in his attempt to throw a perfect strike, he accidentally hits the opposing team's mascot with the ball, starting a riot? It would be a classic Peter Griffin ending, a moment of supposed triumph devolving into utter disaster, highlighting that his journey hasn't really changed him, but it has certainly impacted everyone around him. It would embrace the show's tendency to end episodes on a note of chaos rather than neat resolution. So, how do we score this wild ride? I'm giving Family Guy Season 23, Episode 7 a solid 7.4 out of 10. What earned it those points? The sheer audacity of the premises, the surprisingly sharp social commentary buried under layers of absurdity, and some genuinely laugh-out-loud moments, especially the photography ad and the chiropractor scam. The character moments for Chris and Meg were also a nice touch, offering a glimpse of growth. What lost it those decimal points? The pacing felt a little uneven at times, with some subplots feeling a bit rushed or underdeveloped, like the dying tropical fish office. And while the chiropractic scam was funny, it felt a little over-explained by the end. This episode is definitely for the longtime fans who appreciate the show's particular brand of dark humor and its willingness to tackle real-world issues, even if it's through a lens of extreme silliness. Casual viewers might find it a bit too bizarre or jarring. To push that score higher, I think the main plot with Peter's throwing needed a bit more focus and a more satisfying resolution, or at least a more comedically catastrophic one. Instead of him just learning, the final pitch itself could have been a more significant comedic set piece. This episode opened with a premise about Germany wanting to be seen as fun and silly, a premise that felt a bit contrived. After diving deep into the chiropractic scams, the dark photography ads, the evolving Chris, and Peter's perpetual incompetence, it's clear that Family Guy's version of fun and silly is deeply rooted in the chaotic, often uncomfortable truths of human nature and societal flaws. It's not just about beer and pretzels. It's about the absurdity we find ourselves in when we're trying to be something we're not, or when we're just trying to get by. And that, my friends, is why we keep watching.